Now let's head over into n8n and show you how to actually start building AI agents for either yourself or for businesses. So like I mentioned, n8n is a no-code tool, and because we don't have to write any code, everything is a drag and drop visual builder. Okay, so after clicking sign in, we can see that we're taken to a dashboard, and from here we can either start from a template or start from scratch in building our first workflow. So because we want to learn all the ins and outs about n8n, let's start from scratch. And we can see that we're first taken to a blank canvas, and this is where we can visually create our own automated workflow by either dragging and dropping steps and tools in. So you just have to understand that at its core, n8n is for automating workflows, but within these automated workflows, you can build and integrate AI agents. So AI agents are only a small portion of the entire automated workflow offering by n8n, but if this is confusing, let me visually explain the difference by building our very first workflow. Now let's go ahead and add an action that happens after we receive a new email. So inside here, we can go ahead and select an action inside an app. Now this can be anything, but let's go ahead and keep this simple. So I'll just select Google Sheets. And then inside the Google Sheets action, what we want to do is either append or update a row in the sheet. So we don't want to create an entire new spreadsheet each time we get a new email. We also don't want to delete anything. So this is why we want to append or update row. It's because after every single time we get a new email, we just want to add this new email to our sheet. So clicking into append or update row, we can see that we have, once again, all of the data fields. These are all the data fields that got passed by from the non-simplified outputs of this Gmail trigger here. And then on the right-hand side, we can see what gets outputted after. Now inside this Google Sheets action, we can once again set parameters. So the very first thing, just like we did with Gmail, we need to connect our Google Sheets account. So if this is your first time using n8n, click create new credential, and then allow n8n to edit your existing spreadsheets and be able to perform actions within your account. Once you have this set up, I already have mine saved. We can first select whether we want to use a sheet within a document or a document. So in our case here, we only want to edit one specific sheet, so we can click sheet. And then for the operation, like I mentioned, every single time we get a new email, we want to either append or update a row inside the spreadsheet. And just to show you what my spreadsheet looks like, I just quickly created this email spreadsheet. And what we want to do is just add in all of the addresses that sent us an email, as well as the message that they sent each time we get a new email. So heading back into our workflow, we'll select sheet within document, append or update row. And then for the document, we just want to select email spreadsheet, and then heading over into the sheet. I believe this should be sheet 1. And then now what we can do is, because we don't have an AI agent connected yet, this is just to show you how an automated workflow works before using AI agents. We'll do this manually. So the column to match on, we can do from. And then this is why we need the full data that's not simplified, because from here, we can simply drag and drop all of the data fields we need. So from, we want this to be who sent the email here. And then the message should be the message of the email. So in our case, it should just be the text. Great. And then now let's go ahead and test the step. So if we click test step here, it should now execute this node and add in a new row into our Google Sheets with from AI code pathways, as well as the message that our meeting has been scheduled. So heading back into our Google Sheets, we can see that it's automatically updated here. And now we have a functioning automated workflow. So just to show you how this looks again, I went ahead and sent an email to myself that looks a bit cleaner. Inside our Gmail trigger, we can fetch test event. We can see that this is the email that we just sent. So heading over to the right, it just says this is a test email. That's the text, and it was sent from no code pathways. So let's head out here. And again, all of this data inside this output field is being sent from the trigger step over to our first step. And then inside Google Sheets, if we click into this, we can see this is the email that we inputted. So this is from step 1. We received all of these data fields. And now let's test this step. And it should update our Google Sheet with the first email, which is this is a test email, as well as the from. So now heading over into our email spreadsheet, we can see that inside this a bit cleaner rather than having like image links. It just says this is a test email from, and then the email right here. And then how we would make this active is just simply click active here. We can see that the workflow is activated. And now every single minute, this workflow will check for new emails within your Gmail account and then update the Google Sheet as needed. Now, even though this will save you time, the requirements to go from trigger to action are very rigid, and you're basically limited by what you can accomplish here. But this is where AI agents come in. So AI agents will add intelligence to these workflows and accomplish some really impressive stuff rather than having just something like a trigger and then an action without much intelligence integrated anywhere. Now in our workflow, we can add steps, and these are what n8n calls nodes. So if you just go ahead and click add first step, the first step in a workflow will always be a trigger. So as you can see on the right hand side, we have all of the different triggers that are available for kickstarting your workflow. Now triggers can be anything, such as getting a message on Telegram. It can be a date trigger, so that on a specific date, this workflow begins to occur. Or a trigger can just be typing a message into a chatbot UI. So if your trigger is that you get a chat message or that you get an email, then this is what kickstarts every single step after the trigger. So just to show you how this works, let's go ahead and set a trigger for when you receive a Gmail. So type in Gmail. And as we can see, we have the ability to set the trigger on message received. So all this means is that once your Gmail gets a new email, then every single step after this trigger will occur. And we know this is a trigger because it has this lightning bolt to the left of it. Now, what we can first do is set up parameters for our Gmail trigger. So what we first want to do is connect our Gmail to n8n. So if this is your first time using n8n, you'll have to create a new credential and just sign in with your Google account so that n8n has access to send, receive, and look at your emails. Now, once you have this set up, I'll go ahead and close this because I already have my Gmail account saved. You can now set poll times. So what this means is that this is how often n8n looks through your inbox. So right now we have a Gmail trigger on message received. So what this mode means is that every single minute, n8n will keep scanning your emails, and that if you get another email, then this trigger will occur. So if we were to change this to every hour, this means that n8n will then scan your Gmail every single hour and then let you know if you get a new email, and vice versa for every day, every week, every month, or even custom. But for our cases here, let's just set this to every minute so that n8n is monitoring our emails pretty frequently. And then below this, we have the event, which is message received. All this means is that once we receive a new message inside our inbox, then this trigger will occur. And then below this, we can set if we want the data to be simplified or not. So let's first simplify the data just to show you how this looks. And if we click fetch test event, this will automatically set the trigger to show you what your last email is inside your inbox. So if we click fetch test event here, we can see that our last email was a scheduling email that was automated. Just says your meeting has been scheduled for March 4th. We have the snippet. So this is all the data that's shown inside the simplify menu. So we have an ID, thread ID, snippet, payload, a bunch of pretty much like identification fields. But what we don't have is the full text of the email. So this is why, especially when we're dealing with Gmail triggers, is that we don't want the data to be simplified. And this is just so that we have every single bit of information from the email. So now if we click fetch test event without the data simplified, we can actually see all the different headers. If we scroll down to the right, we can see the full text of the email. And then going further, we still have all the same values. So the address of who sent and who received the email, as well as the text versions of it. So again, all you can think of simplify is that this makes your data a bit cleaner. But since we want to have every single bit of information, especially the full message from the email, I always typically uncheck this so that the messages and data are not simplified. And just so we're clear, this output here, all of these data fields are what gets sent to the AI agent every single time we receive a new email. So for example, once we receive this speeding email, it will send all of these different text values over inside a table to our AI agent, which can then work with this new data. So you can think of this as all of the data that's passed through to the next step. So now let's go ahead and create an AI agent and add some intelligence into a workflow. Just like before, we need a trigger, and this can be anything, once again, like emails, messages, but in our case, we can use something called when chat message received. This will be a chat-based trigger, and it'll show a chatbot for you to talk to the agent, sort of like how ChatGPT works. So just to show you what I mean, let's go ahead and click add first step. And rather than doing a trigger manual or on app event, we'll select on chat message. Now we have this built-in chat UI that n8n provides. And if we want to test out this chat, we can click test chat. And inside here, we can conversate with the AI agent once we connect it. But right now, as you can see, all this is a trigger. There's no LLM model or agent connected to this. So this shouldn't work if we type in hello. As we can see, there's no response. It just says, please make sure the last executed node outputs the contents to display here. But you can think of the chat like this. This is where you send inputs and requests for the AI agent to do things for you. So basically here, you'll tell the AI agent to either update a Google Sheet, schedule something, delete something, send an email, and then the AI agent will do those things. So to actually begin implementing the AI agent, let's go ahead and connect the AI agent node here. So go ahead and add another step. And what we want to do is select advanced AI and AI agent. And this is where all the magic happens. So let's come back to this parameters. I just want to first go over the structure of the agent. So looking at the agent here, we can see that it's made up of a chat model, memory, and tools. So if you recall the earlier lecture, like I mentioned, the chat model is basically the brain of the AI agent. This is what powers all the thinking and reasoning. And then the tools are the capabilities or the hands. And this is what allows the agent to take action and actually do things for us. Now, this third component called memory is just something that allows the AI model to remember our past conversations. So tying this all together, let's go ahead and first add a chat model to our AI agent. So inside the node, just go ahead and click add chat model. And from here, like I mentioned, you can select any different type of LLM. There's Anthropic, Azure, AWS, DeepSeek. We also have Gemini, Grok, Mistral, Ollama if you want something more open source. But for simplicity, and because I already have an account, we can do OpenAI. And just like what we did with Google Sheets and Gmail, you guessed it, we need to add credentials once again. So these credentials are a little bit different. Rather than signing in, you need to actually input in your OpenAI API keys. So I already have my account here, but if you do want to add in a new credential, if you've never used this before, click new credential and all you need is this API key. So I'll go ahead and show you where to find that on the OpenAI website. So if you don't have an OpenAI API key, it's really simple. All you do is head over into openai.com, click login or sign up, and go to the API platform, not ChatGPT. Inside the OpenAI API platform, if you don't have an account, simply create one. And then from here, you're able to access your own API keys to be able to call on any model within the OpenAI space. So these are all the different flagship models you can use with your AI agent. So you can use 4.0 mini, o3 mini, 4.5 preview, and o1. Now this is the pricing for all the different models. I honestly would probably never use GPT 4.5 preview. What this means is that for every 1 million input tokens, it costs $75. And for every 1 million output tokens, it costs $150. Now, this is just a rule of thumb, but if you aren't doing anything too intensive with the AI agent model, then you can simply select 4.0 mini, since this will give your agent some basic intelligence and reasoning to be able to accomplish tasks for you. And if you do want more robust intelligence, then you can select o1 or o3 mini. And this is more so if you're asking the agent to do pretty complex coding or math questions for you. And as you can see, the pricing is a lot different. So every 1 million input tokens only costs 15 cents here, and 60 cents for 1 million output tokens. Compare that to o1 and o3, we can see it's $15 and $1. And if you are using 4.0 mini for the first time, you can just load up your OpenAI account with just a few dollars, and this should last you a good amount of time if you aren't using your agent too intensively. So once you add a few dollars into your account, just simply go over to your dashboard once again, and then click into API keys and copy and paste your API key directly into your workflow within n8n. So now that we have the credentials connected, let's go ahead and choose 4.0 mini since we won't be doing anything intensive with our agent in regards to STEM questions. Now that we have the OpenAI chat model connected to our agent, we're able to now conversate with the chatbot. So we can say hello, and it should now provide responses back to us. We can see the AI agent working with the chat model in conjunction, and we can say, hello, how can I assist you today? Now, like I mentioned, this is only one aspect of the agent. All I can do is think and reason and talk, but it can't actually do things because we have no tools. And it also doesn't remember past conversations because we don't have any memory either. So if we were to say, what is 2 plus 2? We can see that the answer is 4. And then now if we say, now add 2, it won't actually remember our previous answer because it says if you have a specific number or value that you'd like to add to, please provide that number. So even though we just had the answer of 4 and then we try to add 2, it doesn't remember that it just outputted 4 to us, and that's because it has no memory. And this is important because without memory, if you ask an agent to update the database, it can do it in one request. But then in the next request, if you ask the agent to actually undo that change, the agent won't know what you're talking about because there is no memory. This is why memory is so important, and n8n makes it super easy to integrate memory into your agents. So all you want to do is click into this memory section, and you can just choose window buffer memory, which is the easiest way to store memory for your LLMs. Now by clicking into window buffer memory, we can set the context window length, and you can think of this as the number of messages that the AI model will remember. So if you set this to 5, it should remember the past 5 messages or interactions that you've had with the model within the agent. So now testing this out, let's head back into our chat, and then we can say, what is 2 plus 3? The answer is 5, obviously. And then now let's add 4. And it should now output 9 because it remembers what we just said. Awesome. So now we have 2 out of the 3 main components of agents done. And before we move on to tools, which are the capabilities that allow the agent to actually do things, let's go ahead and define our agent parameters more. Or better yet, just explain what the parameters are. So heading over into our AI agent, we can see that within the parameters, the prompt that is being sent to the AI agent is based on whatever we input into the chat. So we typed in please add 4. This is the prompt that's being sent to the LLM. And this is something we don't want to change since we want what we do in step 1 here, all the messages that we send, to be sent to the AI agent. Now, if we wanted to tailor the AI agent a bit more, we can add an option here for a system message. And what this does is allow us to input some specific instructions to the AI model. So right now it just says you're a helpful assistant. But if we wanted to tailor this AI model to be something like a real estate AI agent, we can say you are a helpful real estate agent. Please focus on XYZ analysis, just so the AI agent is a bit more tailored to whatever you want this to do. But again, if you just want a multi-purpose agent that kind of acts as your personal assistant, you can keep this to be the standard prompt that is currently defaulted to. So let's exit out of here and now add tools to our AI agent. So like I mentioned, tools give our AI agent capabilities to do things, and this is where AI agents really shine. So for our first tool, let's go ahead and do what we just did in the previous example, but make it better. So to add a tool, let's once again add in our Google Sheet. So we'll type in Google Sheet, and then within the tool, we want to once again select our account, set automatically. For the resource, we'll select sheet within a document, and the operation is once again, we want to append or update row based on what we tell the agent. So for the document, we can once again choose the email spreadsheet that we were referencing earlier. And then for the sheet, let's choose sheet 1. Now in this mapping section, because we're working with an agent, we can first set this to be from, but for the values to send for the from column as well as the message column, we can have this automatically be defined by the model. So what this means is that the model will look through our chat input message and they will automatically figure out what it is that's in the from section and what is in the message section. And this is what makes agents so much more powerful than what we had before, which was a more kind of like rigid workflow where when we received an email, it would automatically be added to the sheet. But now, rather than having to follow a specific format, the AI model will be able to interpret our chat input and automatically deduce what is the from value and what is the message value. Now let's go ahead and test out our agent. I just typed in a message that says add a new row from test@gmail.com. He said he was confirming receipt of our earlier message. So this is more in a natural language type of method rather than having a very strict email. We can see that the AI agent was working. They automatically updated the Google Sheets, and heading over into Google Sheets, we can see from, they inputted this properly, test@gmail.com. And then the message was that he said he was confirming receipt of our earlier message. So the agent was able to understand what we said strictly from our conversation rather than having to type everything in a specific email. This is a lot more powerful than just simply using Gmails to trigger workflows and actions. And apart from intelligence in specific tools, AI agents are also intelligent at choosing which tools to use. So what this means is that we can theoretically have hundreds of different tools, and whatever we send inside this chat UI, the agent will know exactly what tool to use and then how to use it. So to make this agent an all-in-one helper, let's go ahead and add more tools. So what we can do is just simply click add another tool. And we have a myriad of different tools we can use. So we can connect this n8n workflow to another workflow we've made. This is what this call n8n workflow tool is. We can also write a custom tool in either JavaScript or Python if you do come from a technical background. And you can also make HTTP requests. Below this, we just have all of the different third-party software that we can connect to for tools as well. So in our case, let's go ahead and add a tool to send a Gmail. So we'll type in Gmail tool. And once again, we just want to make sure that our credentials are connected correctly. I'll do my first Gmail account. For the tool description, we can set this to be automatic. The resource is message. Since we do want to send a message, the operation will be send. And because we're using an AI model, we can just have the AI model define all these parameters. So again, it's intelligent. So it's able to take what we input inside our chat and deduce what the to is, what the subject is, and what the message is. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and try out this new tool. So I've just typed in a message inside our chat UI. It just says, please send a message to test1@gmail.com. Let him know that he's running late to our meeting. So if we type this in, the AI agent will automatically know to not touch the Google Sheets tool, but rather use the Gmail tool to send a message. And then we can see that within Gmail, they've automatically formatted our email for us. So they typed in a subject called meeting reminder, and then they sent it to the proper email, which was test1@gmail.com. and they're just deducing that the name is test. So they're saying, dear test, this is a reminder that you're running late to our meeting. Best regards. So just from that one message, the AI agent knew exactly which tool to use, which was Gmail, not Google Sheets. And they also knew how to format the Gmail properly just based on what we writ in a more casual conversation. This is what real intelligence is when automating workflows with AI agents. And because we want this to be an all-in-one helper, let's add one more tool. So inside the tool here, I also want this AI agent to be able to schedule meetings for us. So what we can do is type in Google Calendar, select the Google Calendar tool, and you guessed it, just like before, we need to connect it to our Google Calendar account. So make sure you add that credential if you haven't already. And then below this, we can have everything be set automatically. Again, we want the AI to read our chat input and know what calendar event to create, when it starts, when it ends, and all the other fields. So let me show you. We want this to be an event. We want to create events based on what we tell the agent. And then for the calendar, we'll select our calendar, AI code pathways. For the start time and end time, we'll have the model define this. So again, this just means that the AI model reads our chat input, whatever we type in, and they'll deduce what the start time and end time of the meeting is. And then below this, we can also add additional fields. So if you want to add the ability to have attendees inside our meeting, we'll type in attendees. Once again, the AI model can determine who the attendees are based on what we send them. And then another field can be the description. This can just be a text description of the meeting. Once again, the AI model will determine this for us. And then finally, we can add a summary, which is basically just the title of the event, what the meeting's called. And then once again, we want this to be defined automatically by the AI model. So inside our AI agent, we now have 3 tools, but if we tell it to schedule a meeting, it'll know not to touch the Google Sheets or Gmail tool and automatically create an event. So here, I just typed in a message that says, help me schedule a meeting with steve@gmail.com for March 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We'll just say, call it introductory call. And then from here, the agent should know, first of all, to select the Google Calendar tool and schedule the meeting for us. And then below this, we can see that the meeting was scheduled called introductory call. But the issue here is that they actually scheduled it for March 4th, 2024. Now, the issue here is that our AI agent doesn't currently know what the date and time is. It seems like they were only trained up to 2023. So right now, it's assuming that March 4th, 2024 is the closest date to us, which is obviously not correct. We're in 2025. So what we can do is update the AI agent to understand what today is. This is a very simple fix, and this kind of showcases how to use parameters. So inside the system message, like I mentioned, you can tailor this to be more specific for the agent if you want it to do things within different niches like real estate, warehousing, e-commerce, etc. But for our case, we just want the AI agent to know the current date and time. So we can say today is, and then we can add an expression for the current date and time. All you do is add in 2 brackets, and they already have this automatically suggested as now. And what this does is return the current date and time, which is 2025, March 2nd. Great. Now let's exit out of here, save our workflow, and try this one more time. So now in the second message, I've typed in schedule a meeting with Brian@gmail.com for March 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll call it second call. And notice that I didn't say the year, but it should now do March 4th, 2025, because it knows what date we are. Perfect. So we can see it automatically set it to be March 4th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And even better, because it's intelligent, the description says a follow-up meeting to discuss previous topics, and it's assuming it's a follow-up meeting because it's a second call, which was the only information I gave it. And awesome, inside our calendar, we can see that on March 4th, 2025, we have an event called second call at 10 a.m. Pacific time with brian@gmail.com, and everything looks perfect. And this agent can now first update spreadsheets for you, schedule meetings and events for you, and also send emails for you. It's basically a personal assistant all in one. Now, if you want to share this tool with your team or other people you know, we can set this to be live so that anyone can use this agent. So what we first want to do is head over into our initial trigger and make this chat publicly available. What they'll do is give you a production URL that is unique to yourself. And from here, you can copy this. And then whenever you do want to use the agent, just simply go into this URL and you'll be able to use it. Now, the only thing you need to first set is for the workflow to be active. So make sure that this is checked. And then just simply go into the URL. And as we can see here, we have a chatbot UI that functions just like what we had within n8n. And with this chatbot, we can send the exact same messages and it'll perform every single action for us. So now let's run through every single tool we have inside this agent. So now I've typed in the message, please update our spreadsheet and add another row for Brian@gmail.com. He said he can't come to the second meeting. Type this in and then wait for the agent to provide a response. Awesome. So we can see that the AI agent automatically updated the spreadsheet to reflect that Brian cannot attend the second meeting. So let's head over into Google Sheets. We can see from is brian@gmail.com, and the message is that he cannot attend the second meeting. Next, let's go ahead and send a message to Brian. So in this message, I just said, please send a message to brian@gmail.com and let him know that we'll be scheduling a third meeting. We can see that the agent has sent a message to Brian informing him about the scheduling of a third meeting. And then if we head over to Gmail, I've opened this already, but the subject is scheduling a third meeting. Hi, Brian. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to let you know that we'll be scheduling a third meeting soon. Please keep an eye out for the invitation. And then to round off this AI agent, let's go ahead and actually schedule the meeting. So I've typed in a message, please schedule a meeting with Brian on March 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll title it third meeting. And as we can see, the third meeting was scheduled March 17th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And they also knew, even though we didn't say brian@gmail.com, because we have memory and we were talking about Brian before, they already knew to set the attendee to be brian@gmail.com. And then as we can see on the calendar, we have our third meeting at 10 a.m. Pacific time with brian@gmail.com. Our agent was intelligent enough to be able to select tools for all of our messages and be able to accomplish tasks that any normal personal assistant would. And the beauty of these agents are just how flexible they can be. So if you don't want to use that built-in chat UI that n8n provides, you can just simply delete this trigger and set this to be something that your company actually uses. So for example, if your company uses Slack and you want to type into the bot every single time you want the agent to do something, you can simply add the first step. And then from here, we can do on new message posted to a channel. And then the channel could be something like AI agent. And then with our Slack trigger, we can just simply connect this to our existing AI agent. So rather than having a chat interface, we can simply use our existing company's workflows within Slack, type in something to a channel, and have all of these tools be accessible to members of your team. Now, this is just the core fundamental section, but the possibilities within using n8n really are endless. So I would recommend you just look through your existing systems and see how it can be improved upon using AI agents. Now that we've created a simple AI agent that acts as our personal assistant, let's turn this up one notch. In this next workflow, we can use AI agents to reference our own personal documents. This is the next step in really integrating AI agents with your own existing business workflows. So in our next workflow, we'll integrate something called RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. You can think of this like giving an AI model an open book to look things up while it's giving an answer. So the way this works is that instead of relying on the general data that ChatGPT models are trained on, which are all public, you can now provide private data yourself. And these can be anything from business documents to private text documents and everything in between. So with RAG, you can connect agents to your own business data. And because they're in tune with all your private documents, they can be an expert in your business and behave just like one of your employees. Now, inside n8n, we can create our next workflow, which will be a real estate AI agent. So with this agent, we can upload documents of our own personal property listings, and this can include things like amenities, price, square footage, and descriptions of the properties. Now, what's different from our previous agent is that because we now have files to upload, we need a database to store the files for the AI agent to read through. Now for our database, we'll be using Supabase since it's fairly easy to set up and it has a free plan. And then just to show you what our documents look like, these can obviously be anything, but I've just uploaded 2 quick commercial and residential properties portfolios. So if we double click into either of the documents, we can see that it has a property ID, the name of the property, the address, occupancy, square footage, amenities, year built, and price. So what we want to do is essentially feed this information here directly to our AI agent so that it can either answer questions for us regarding this information or perform tasks based on what we have here. Now we can think of making our RAG agent in 2 different workflows. So the first workflow doesn't actually require an AI agent. All this first workflow does is download files from our Google Drive onto our Supabase database. So what we want is for these 2 files inside our n8n folder inside our Google Drive to be downloaded to Supabase so that the AI agent can then read it in the next workflow. And we can also automate this first workflow to automatically download any new business documents whenever they are uploaded to this Google Drive folder. And then once we finish the first workflow, we can begin working on the second workflow, which will reference the files we uploaded to Supabase, and then have the AI agent work with the files, analyze the files, and they can even ask questions and answer questions about the files. So for our first workflow, let's just create this with a manual trigger for simplicity. So just like how we did it in the first part of the video, let's add our trigger, and this one can now be triggered manually. So what this means is that we have to physically click test workflow to start this workflow. Now the next step is to download our business files from our Google Drive folder to n8n temporarily before we can move it to a database. Now this is an important distinction. So if you only want to download one single file, all you have to do is click add next step, and we can type in Google Drive here, and then we can select download a file so that when we click test workflow, it'll automatically download a file from our Google Drive. Now this will work great if you are working with individual files, but as you recall earlier, we have two separate files inside our Google Drive. We have one for commercial real estate properties and then one for residential. And again, if you want to add even more documents, then this folder is going to get even larger. And because of this, we don't want to just download a single file. We want to have the ability to download multiple files. And that's why we need to add two different steps rather than just downloading a file from Google Drive. And the way we do this from n8n is to first search for the folder. And then once we get the folder, we can get the URLs of the file and then download the files from there. So if that's a little bit confusing, let me explain it and show it to you visually. So what we first want to do is delete this because we are working with folders. Now let's go ahead and create a next step, which once again is within the Google Drive node. Now inside Google Drive, what we want to do is search files and folders. So clicking into this, we can see that we have the ability to once again sign in with credentials. Now again, I'm already signed in with my Google Drive account, but if you don't, then simply click create new credential, select OAuth 2. And then from here, what you would need to do is first create a Google Cloud Console account. And then from there, you can sign in with your Google Drive account. Now the setup is fairly easy, but if you don't know how to do this, you can simply open the docs and they'll provide you a step-by-step process on how to sign in using Google. So basically just follow this documentation. What you do is create a Google Cloud account and then set up OAuth within that Google Cloud account. Now, once you have that all set, you can simply select your own Google Drive account. And then for the resource, it'll be file folder. Since we do want to search for a folder, the operation can be search file folder name. And like I mentioned, you want to search for a folder. And just to show you what I mean, you can't download entire folders. So if you try to select download, there is no ability to download folders. You can only create, delete, share, and custom API call. But if you select individual files, you can download the files directly onto n8n. So again, if you're only working with one individual file, you can skip this step. And because you are usually dealing with multiple files inside your business workflow, I would recommend you take the time to do both of these steps. So for the resource, we'll change this back to file and folder, change the operation to search. Search method is search file folder name. And then what we want to do is just add a filter for that folder name. So if we head over into Google Drive, we can see that the folder name is called n8n. So heading back over into our workflow, we can just type in folder and we can select the n8n folder. And then now let's go ahead and test this step. And we can see that both of the files are now shown. We have our commercial properties portfolio and then residential properties portfolio. Now, all this does is search the files, but we still need to download the files onto n8n. So let's go ahead and add this as our next step. So in our next step, we can now finally actually download the files. We can select download a file. And then because we searched the files in the previous step, what we can do now is download the files by ID. So simply drag over this ID and then click test step. And as we can see in the output, we now have the two different files. So the commercial properties portfolio and then the residential properties portfolio. Now, after this step, the documents should be temporarily downloaded to n8n. And what we have to do now is transfer these documents here to our Supabase database. And if you want to get a bit more technical, we actually need a special type of database that's called a vector store. And this is something that Supabase offers within its database. So what a vector store is essentially a database for storing and searching through text. But because it's a vector store, the text has been converted to numbers that capture the text meaning. So because all the text is basically converted to numbers inside our vector store, it's a lot easier for the LLM to search through and find relevant information. So you can think of it like this. You get text from documents right here in this step. And then once you get the text from the document, you can use an embedding service to change all of the text here into numbers. And then you can store those numbers inside a vector store. So in our case, we're using a Supabase database as our vector store. And then within this vector store, the numbers are easy to comb through to find relevant information by the AI agent. So now let's go ahead and show this visually by adding a node for our Supabase vector store. So clicking into this here, what we want to search for is Supabase. And like I mentioned, we don't want the regular database, which stores text. We want the vector store that converts the text into numbers, which makes it a lot easier to analyze and comb through. So selecting vector store here, we can see that we have a lot of options. And what we want to do is add documents to our vector store. Because again, we have the documents from the Google Drive, and now we need to add it to Supabase. So selecting this here, what we first need to do is select our credentials to connect with Supabase. And because this is a little bit more complex, I'll walk you through step by step on how to do this. What you first want to do is select credentials and create a new credential. And as you can see, we first need a host URL and then the service role secret. Next, what you want to do is sign in or sign up for a Supabase account and head over to the dashboard. Inside the dashboard, just create a new project. And for the project name, obviously you can call it anything. I'll do real estate. For the database password, just do something that you'll remember. Then select the region closest to you and then click create new project. Now you're taken to your project, and what you want to do is scroll down so that you can see your project URL. And we also need the service key, which can be found here. So simply click this link. And then we can see that we have a service role secret. So click reveal and then click copy. And then copy and paste your host URL as well here. Now from here, this credential will be successfully created and you'll be connected to your Supabase project. Now next, what we need to do is make the Supabase data table functional for our workflow. So to make this as simple as possible, what we want to do is open up the documentation, then select Supabase Vector Store, and then go over to this link that says Quick Start for setting up your vector store. And this might seem daunting at first, but all we need to do is initialize a database to work with n8n. So what you can do is go ahead and copy over this code, and then heading back over into Supabase, just to show you what I mean, if we go over to the table editor, we can see that we don't have any data tables. So what that code does is essentially run some SQL commands to create a customized table for us to use. Now the way we would run this code is simply by going over to this SQL editor and then pasting in the code, and then clicking run. Now, one important thing is that this assumes that we're using OpenAI embeddings, but if we are using a different AI model, then I'll just change this row 9 embedding vector to the number that corresponds with the model you want to use. But for simplicity's sake, we'll always use OpenAI throughout every single section of this video. So now let's go ahead and run this. And we can see success, no rows returned. And just to confirm that the table is created, if we head back over into our table editor, we can see we now have a table called documents, and this is where all of our data will be placed. Now let's head back over into n8n, and then we can now choose the table that we just created. So over here inside the table list, we can choose documents. And then lastly, what we can do is add an option to match the documents to the queries. And this sets up our parameters for the Supabase vector store. And then next, like I mentioned, we need to actually embed the data. So if we get the text data here, to store it inside this vector store, we need to convert it to numbers, and that's where the embedding model comes into play. So just to make this simple, click plus inside embedding, and what we want to just use is OpenAI, since we've been using OpenAI for everything thus far. So clicking into OpenAI, because our data isn't too intensive, I can just select 3 small, which is the smallest model here. Now exiting out of embedding, what we can finally do is add a data loader. So clicking plus here, we can select our default data loader. And what this does is just simply load the data that we got from our files in the previous step. So these 2 files here. And because the data type for the files can change, what we want to do is select binary, and everything else can stay the same. So now let's exit out of here. And then the final thing we need to do is add a text splitter. So what a text splitter does is that it essentially breaks down our document into chunks. This makes it a bit easier to store for both us and the agent. So what we can do is click plus here and select recursive character text splitter. Now I would recommend this because n8n themselves say that's recommended for most use cases. But obviously if you do have special documents, then I would choose a different type of text splitter. But for our case here, it's a simple text document, so we'll just choose recursive character. And then here we can set the chunk size and chunk overlap. Now the chunk size just tells you how big each individual chunk will be of data. And because our documents aren't too large, I'll just keep this to the default of 1000. But if you are dealing with larger documents, for example, you should increase this chunk size a bit larger just so that your documents don't get refactored into, say, like 1,000,000 chunks. And you can also set the chunk overlap to a higher number if you don't want to miss any data. But again, for our case, because our documents aren't too large, we can just set this to be 0. And then what we can do is finally test this workflow to see how this information gets loaded inside our Supabase vector store. Let's go ahead and click test workflow. We can see that it's working throughout all the steps, and the data is getting embedded into our vector store. And to make sure that everything is stored properly within Supabase, we can head over into our Supabase dashboard, click into documents, and we can see that we have 6 different chunks of text. Now that our business documents are uploaded inside this workflow, we can begin integrating AI agents in a separate workflow so that they can interact with the documents inside our Supabase vector store. So again, all this workflow does is send our documents from Google Drive into Supabase. And then our next workflow will actually work with the Supabase documents. So moving on, let's go ahead and move this to the right a bit, and we can add another trigger. So clicking plus on the top right, we can select add another trigger. And just like our previous agent workflow, we can select on chat message so that we can see the chat UI and talk to the agent as if it was a chatbot. So again, we don't need to change any of the parameters here. And we can see that we have our second workflow here created. Now let's add in our AI agent node, just like we did in the first example. So clicking plus here, advanced AI, and let's select AI agent. Now the parameters here we can keep the same because once again, we want the source for the prompt to be from the previous chat trigger node. So we don't have to change anything here. And then now we can add in our chat models. So just like we did before, we'll use OpenAI for everything. So let's select OpenAI chat model. And again, because our text documents are literally just property details and listings, we don't need anything further than 4.0 mini. But again, if you're working with things like coding documentation or just complex STEM resources, I would select a stronger model like O1 or O3. Now moving along here, the memory, just like we did before, will be the window buffer memory since it is the easiest to store. Now let's add in tools to work with our vector store. Now, if we want to be able to interact or update or get documents directly from our Supabase vector store, we can just select this tool to get documents. So what this looks like is Supabase vector store. So this works with the data inside what we have in the first step. But what we can also do is just interact directly with the documents inside our vector by asking questions to the AI model about all the information that's found inside the vector database. So to do this, we can choose a tool called Answer Questions with Vector Store. So simply select this. And then we can pre-populate all this information. So this will be, so for the description of data, all I did was just type in listings of real estate and commercial properties. So now we can exit out. And this is where we connect the first step of our vector database into the second workflow here. So what we want to do is select vector store. And now we want to select Supabase vector store since this is what we've been working on. And we are already connected to our Supabase account. So that's fine. We want to retrieve documents. And then for the table, we once again want to choose the table that we created, which is documents. And then because in the first workflow for embedding, we selected OpenAI's small 3, we can do the same exact embedding for this vector store here. So click add, click OpenAI. And then for the model, once again, we just want to do the same exact embedding model. So now exiting out of here, the last step is to add the model for answering questions with the vector store. And again, this just adds intelligence to be able to answer and analyze all our documents. So for our model, once again, we can select OpenAI and 4.0 mini. Now clicking save, we have our final product. We have 2 separate workflows. This first one just sends information and documents from our Google Drive directly to Supabase. And the second workflow adds an AI agent to be able to ask questions and answer questions within our Supabase vector store. Now let's go ahead and test the second workflow. So if you recall, we already tested the first workflow and we see that the data has been populated inside our data table within Supabase. So all we need to do is run the second workflow. So inside the second workflow, we can open the chat. And now the AI agent is loaded with private information about our business. So let's type in a message here. So I typed in a question, how many residential properties do you have on your listings? And as we can see, there are 5 residential properties in the listings. And just to confirm, if we head over into our Google Drive, residential properties, we can see there's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we can also ask questions about the properties. So for example, if we want to know the price of Lakeside Retreat, so then heading over into n8n, we can ask what is the price of Lakeside Retreat? And we can see the price is $290,000. So just to cross-reference, heading over to Lakeside Retreat, the price is $290,000. Now, obviously, this is all mock data, but what this shows is the structure of how to actually integrate AI agents into your own business workflow. This is huge for having an intelligent agent that can work just like an employee inside your business. By pre-populating it with business data, you can keep all the intelligence that's already baked into the OpenAI models, but then add your own personal information so that the AI agent is personalized to you and your business. And this is the real magic that really separates AI agents from just using something like chatgpt.com.